Ever wondered why some muscle cars become legends while others just become old cars? What if I told you that the 1969 Dodge Charger has been hiding secrets that would make even the most die-hard gearheads do a double take? We're not talking about horsepower numbers or quarter-mile times here. We're counting down 20 shocking secrets about this American icon that'll completely change how you see this beast. So buckle up, because after this, you'll never look at a Charger the same way again. And hey, if you're into classic muscle cars, hit that like button and subscribe for more automotive revelations. Number 20. The mystery of the missing cars. Here's something that'll make your jaw drop. Dodge claims they built 89,199 Chargers in 1969. But here's where it gets weird. When researchers started digging through VIN numbers and production records in the 90s, they found evidence of at least 2,000 more cars that supposedly never existed. These ghost Chargers had build sheets. They had everything except official recognition. Some collectors believe these were special order vehicles for Chrysler executives and their friends. Others think they were prototype builds that got sold through back channels. The wildest theory is that Dodge deliberately underreported production numbers to make the car seem rarer than it actually was. And get this, several of these phantom cars have surfaced at auctions over the years with documentation that checks out perfectly, but officially they don't exist. Number 19. The engine that wasn't supposed to exist. Everyone knows the 426 Hemi was the king of Charger engines in 1969. 425 cubic inches of pure American muscle. But here's the secret. That engine was never supposed to make it into production in the Charger. Chrysler had a corporate ban on engines over 400 cubic inches in intermediate cars. The brass upstairs said it was too dangerous, too much liability, too much power for the average driver. But the Charger team had other plans. They built the engine anyway, tested it in secret, and when they finally showed it to management, they presented it as a limited production special that would only go to experienced drivers. The truth is, they knew they'd sell every single one they could build. The corporate ban stayed in place officially, but somehow 432 Hemi Chargers rolled off the assembly line. Funny how that works. Number 18. The paint code conspiracy. Check this out. If you've ever looked at a 1969 Charger's paint code, you might have noticed something strange. Certain colors that definitely existed don't have official paint codes. Collectors have documented at least 7 different shades that appeared on Chargers, but aren't in any Dodge color chart. The most famous is a deep purple that owners call Phantom Plum. It's darker than the official violet paint, but lighter than black. About 200 cars seem to have this color. Dodge says it doesn't exist, but walk through any major Charger show and you'll see them. The theory is that these were custom mixes done at the factory for special orders. Some paint shop workers have come forward claiming they mixed these colors off the books for cash payments. Dodge denies all of it, but the cars are out there. Number 17. The racing ban that wasn't. In 1969, Chrysler had an official no racing policy. They weren't supposed to support any racing activities or build race-specific parts. It was all about safety and corporate image. But if you knew the right people and said the right words, you could order your Charger with some very interesting options. Options that didn't appear in any brochure, like aluminum heads that just happened to flow 30% better than stock, or a camshaft that was way too aggressive for street driving, or a rear-end ratio that only made sense on a drag strip. These parts came in plain brown boxes. No part numbers, no documentation, just a wink and a nod from your dealer. Hundreds of these shadow racing packages were sold. Officially, they never existed. But Saturday night at drag strips across America, they were destroying the competition. Number 16. The Canadian connection. Here's something most American muscle car fans don't know. The Canadian-built 1969 Chargers were different, really different, and not just in the obvious ways like metric speedometers. The Canadian cars got unique options you couldn't get stateside, like a heavy-duty cooling package that included an oil cooler as standard equipment, or the mysterious winter package that included a block heater, different gear ratios, and special cold weather lubricants. But the biggest secret is that about 300 Canadian Chargers got an experimental traction control system. It was primitive, basically just a limited slip differential with special clutches, but it worked. These cars could hook up on ice better than anything else Chrysler made. The system was supposed to go into production for 1970. It never did. Those 300 cars remain the only Chargers with factory traction control. Number 15. The Celebrity Files. You want to know a secret? Hollywood doesn't want you to know. At least 40 major celebrities owned 1969 Chargers, but most of them hid it. Why? Because muscle cars weren't cool in Hollywood circles. They were considered low-class blue-collar, not the image stars wanted to project. But behind closed doors, they couldn't resist. Secret documents from a Beverly Hills Dodge dealer show orders from A-list actors using fake names. One Academy Award winner ordered 3 identical black Chargers under his gardener's name. A famous singer had his delivered to a warehouse in Nevada so the press wouldn't see it. The best part is that many of these celebrity Chargers had modifications done at the dealer. Bulletproof glass, hidden compartments. One even had an early car phone system installed. These cars occasionally surface at auctions today, usually with no mention of their famous first owners. Number 14. The transmission nobody talks about. Everyone knows the Charger came with either a 4-speed manual or a TorqueFlite automatic. That's what the books say. That's what Dodge says. But there's documented evidence of at least 50 cars that left the factory with something else entirely. A heavy-duty 3-speed automatic that was only supposed to be in trucks. The transmission code doesn't match anything in the official records. Owners who found these cars thought they had bogus documentation until they started comparing notes. All the cars have the same weird code, all have the same unusual shift pattern, and all seem to have been built in a 2-week period. In April 1969, the theory is that Dodge was testing a new transmission design and used the Charger as a real-world test bed. The test must have failed because the transmission never went into production, but those 50 cars are still out there, shifting differently than every other Charger on the road. Number 13. The assembly line sabotage. This one's dark. In late 1969, quality control inspectors at the Hamtramck, Michigan assembly plant noticed something strange. About 1 in every 100 Chargers had subtle defects that seemed intentional. Bolts that were barely finger tight, wiring harnesses with cuts in specific places, brake lines with tiny punctures. At first, they thought it was sloppy work. Then, they realized it was sabotage. The investigation found that a group of workers who'd been passed over for promotions were deliberately damaging cars. But only specific cars, only Chargers, and only ones going to certain regions. They were caught, but not before an estimated 200 cars left the plant with these hidden time bombs. Dodge quietly recalled what they could find, but many had already been sold. Some probably failed catastrophically. Others might still be out there waiting to fail 50 years later. Number 12. The government cars. In 1969, the U.S. government ordered exactly 37 Chargers. Officially, they don't exist. No government procurement records, no GSA numbers, nothing. But the cars were built. They had special VINs that don't decode properly. They had blackout packages that weren't available to civilians. And they had some very interesting modifications like switches under the dash that killed all the lights instantly, or reinforced bumpers that could ram through barriers, or engine modifications that pushed power well beyond factory specs. These weren't cop cars. Local police couldn't afford Chargers. These were federal cars. Some people who claim to have worked on them say they were for high-speed pursuit training. Others say they were for transporting valuable assets quickly and discreetly. A few have surfaced in private collections, always with their special features removed or disabled. The owners usually have stories about buying them from government auctions that have no official records. Number 11. The dealer network secret. Want to hear something that'll blow your mind? In 1969, there was an underground network of Dodge dealers who were building superchargers that made the factory Hemi look tame. They called it the Brotherhood of Speed. About 20 dealers across the country were involved. They'd take delivery of Chargers and immediately tear them down. Then, they'd rebuild them with parts that weren't supposed to exist. We're talking about engines pushing 550 cubic inches, suspension components stolen from Corvette racing programs, brake systems from much heavier cars. These dealers would then sell these monsters to selected customers for huge markups. The cars came with no warranty and a verbal agreement to never mention where the modifications came from. Chrysler knew about it but couldn't stop it without admitting that they were secretly supporting the modifications. It's estimated that between 200 and 300 of these superchargers were built. Finding one today is like finding buried treasure. Number 10. The color-changing paint experiment. This is going to sound like science fiction, but it's 100% true. In mid-1969, Chrysler Chrysler's Advanced Materials Division developed a paint that could change color based on temperature. Not just a subtle shift. We're talking about going from black to bright red as the car warmed up. They needed to test it in the real world, so they painted exactly 12 Chargers with this experimental coating. The cars were distributed to Chrysler engineers and their families with strict instructions to document how the paint held up. The experiment failed spectacularly. The paint would change colors at random. Sometimes it would stay half black, half red. Sometimes it would turn colors that weren't supposed to be possible. After 6 months, Chrysler recalled all 12 cars to repaint them. But here's the thing, they only got 10 back. 2 are still out there somewhere, presumably repainted by now. But if you ever see a 69 Charger where the paint looks weird in old photos, you might be looking at one of the lost color changers. Number 9, the sound that shouldn't exist. Every gearhead knows what a big block Dodge sounds like. That distinctive rumble is unmistakable. But some 1969 Chargers sound different, really different, and it's not the exhaust. In late 1968, Chrysler engineers were experimenting with acoustic technology. They developed a resonator system that could change the engine's sound frequency, make it deeper, more intimidating. They installed it on about 100 pre-production Chargers for testing. The system worked too well. Test drivers reported feeling physically uncomfortable at certain RPMs. The sound would penetrate your chest and make your heart skip beats. Chrysler killed the program, but those 100 cars had already been mixed into regular production. They couldn't find them all to remove the systems. So, somewhere out there are Chargers that don't just sound mean, they sound wrong. Owners often think something's broken. Mechanics can never find the problem because the problem is a hidden resonator system that's doing exactly what it was designed to do. Number 8, the Executive Massacre. In October 1969, something happened at Chrysler that's been covered up for 50 years. 15 high-level executives were fired on the same day. The official reason was restructuring, but insiders know the truth. These executives had been using their positions to build personal Chargers with parts and options that were beyond special. We're talking about prototype engines that made 700 horsepower, suspension systems from the Corvette Grand Sport program, brake packages from Can-Am race cars. They thought they were untouchable. They were wrong. When Chrysler's board found out about these superchargers, they went nuclear. The executives were fired. Their cars were supposedly destroyed. But here's where it gets interesting. At least 5 of these executive specials have surfaced over the years. They're always sold quietly, always to collectors who promise to keep their mouths shut. The cars are so heavily modified, they barely resemble stock Chargers, but they're out there representing what might have been if Chrysler had really let their engineers run wild. Number 7, the insurance scandal. You think insurance fraud is a modern problem? In 1969, there was a massive conspiracy involving Chargers and insurance companies. Here's how it worked. Dealers would report cars as stolen before they were even delivered. The insurance companies would pay out. Then the cars would magically appear at dealerships in other states with new VINs. It was perfect. The cars were so new that nobody had proper documentation yet. VIN databases were primitive, and demand was so high that nobody asked questions when an extra Charger showed up. The scheme fell apart when one car got stolen 3 times. Insurance investigators started comparing notes and uncovered a network involving at least 50 dealers across 12 states. The scandal was hushed up to prevent a massive industry black eye, but it means there are probably hundreds of 1969 Chargers out there with questionable histories, cars that officially don't exist but are sitting in someone's garage right now. Number 6, the Space Program Connection. This one's so weird it's hard to believe, but in 1969, NASA bought 7 Chargers, not for the astronauts to drive, for testing. They were developing new materials for the Space Shuttle program and needed test beds for high-stress experiments. These Chargers were fitted with experimental ceramic brake rotors, carbon fiber body panels that wouldn't be seen on production cars for decades, even a titanium exhaust system that cost more than the car itself. The cars were thrashed mercilessly at NASA facilities, driven at sustained high speeds for hours, subjected to temperature extremes, used to test materials that would eventually go into space. When the testing was done, the cars were supposed to be destroyed, but NASA being NASA, they just parked them in a warehouse and forgot about them. In the early 2000s, they were quietly sold at a government auction. The buyers had no idea what they were getting. These rolling pieces of space program history are now in private hands, probably restored to stock condition with no trace of their cosmic past. fast. Number 5. The mob cars. In 1969, organized crime had a problem. They needed fast cars that could blend in, not flashy Cadillacs or Lincolns that screamed mob boss. They needed something that looked normal but could outrun anything on the road. Enter the Charger. Through corrupt dealers in New York, Detroit, and Chicago, the mob ordered dozens of specially modified Chargers. These weren't just fast cars. They had hidden compartments welded into the frame rails, switches that would disable the brake lights for night runs. Some even had early nitrous systems for emergency speed bursts. The FBI knew about these cars but could never prove anything. The modifications were too well hidden. The paper trails were too clean. It wasn't until years later, when mob figures started flipping, that the full story came out. These cars were used for everything from money runs to hit getaways. Today, some of these mob Chargers are in museums. Others are owned by collectors who have no idea about their dark history. But if you know what to look for, specific welding patterns, unusual switch placements, you can still identify them. Number 4. The recall that never happened. In December 1969, Chrysler discovered a catastrophic flaw in about 800 Chargers. The frame rails on cars built during a specific 2-week period had defective welds. Under hard acceleration, the frames could literally crack in half. Chrysler prepared a massive recall. Letters were drafted, dealers were notified, then nothing. The recall never happened. Why? Because Chrysler calculated it would be cheaper to quietly settle lawsuits than admit to the defect. They figured most cars would never see the kind of stress that would cause failure. They were mostly right, but not entirely. Over the years, dozens of Chargers have suffered catastrophic frame failures. The owners usually blame aftermarket modifications or age. They don't know their car was doomed from the factory. Chrysler still denies the defect existed, but internal documents that leaked in the 90s tell a different story. Those 800 cars are still out there. Most have probably been reinforced during restorations, but some are ticking time bombs, waiting for one hard launch to split in half. Number 3. The time capsule cars. Here's something that sounds like an urban legend, but is absolutely true. In 1969, a Chrysler executive ordered 25 identical Chargers. Not to drive, not to sell, to bury. He was convinced that muscle cars would be banned soon and wanted to preserve them for the future. These cars were prepared with special rust proofing, filled with nitrogen instead of air in the tires, and sealed in waterproof containers. Then they were buried in locations across the Midwest. The executive died in 1985, taking the locations to his grave, but he left clues, cryptic notes in safety deposit boxes, strange markings on old maps. To date, 7 of these time capsule Chargers have been found. Each one emerged from the ground in perfect condition, 0 miles on the odometer, still smelling like a new car. The finders have sold them for astronomical prices to collectors who appreciate owning a literal piece of preserved history. But that means 18 more are still out there waiting underground. Modern treasure hunters use everything from ground-penetrating radar to old aerial photos trying to find them. It's the ultimate barn find, except the barn is 6 feet under. Number 2. The engine that predicted the future. In April 1969, Chrysler engineers built 5 experimental engines that were decades ahead of their time. These weren't just big blocks with fancy parts. These were glimpses into the future. Variable valve timing, direct injection, even primitive computer controls. They put these engines in Charger test mules to see if the technology could survive real-world abuse. The engines made incredible power. Some dyno sheets showed over 600 horsepower, but more importantly, they got better fuel economy than the standard 440. The technology was too expensive and complex for 1969, but Chrysler learned from these experiments. Features from these engines would appear in production cars 20 years later. The test cars were supposed to be destroyed after the program ended, but at least 2 survived. They're in private collections now, their owners probably unaware they're driving around with engines that predicted technologies like VTEC and direct injection by decades. These Chargers aren't just muscle cars, they're rolling prophecies of the automotive future. Number 1. The Charger that killed muscle cars. Here it is, the biggest secret, the one that changes everything. In late 1969, Chrysler built one very special Charger. It had every performance option, every secret upgrade, every experimental part they could throw at it. This was going to be the ultimate muscle car. The press release was written, the marketing campaign was planned. This car was going to show the world that Chrysler could build something that made everything else look slow. Then they tested it. it. The car was terrifyingly fast. 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds. Quarter-mile times that wouldn't be matched for decades. Top speed that was genuinely dangerous. But more importantly, it was uncontrollable. Professional test drivers crashed it twice. The car was so powerful, so brutal, that it was genuinely unsafe. Chrysler executives realized they'd gone too far. If this car got into public hands, people would die. Lawsuits would destroy the company. So they made a decision. Not only would this ultracharger never see production, but the entire muscle car program would be wound down. The insurance companies were already circling. The government was making noise about safety. This car was the excuse they needed to kill the muscle car era. The ultracharger was supposedly destroyed, but rumors persist that it's hidden in a Chrysler warehouse somewhere, waiting. The car's so powerful, it killed an entire genre of automobiles. The ultimate charger that was too ultimate for its own good. And there you have it. 20 secrets about the 1969 Dodge Charger that'll make you see this legend in a whole new light. From ghost cars to mob runners, from space-age technology to buried treasure, this isn't just a muscle car. It's a rolling mystery wrapped in American steel. Which secret shocked you the most? Drop a comment below and let us know. And if you want more automotive secrets and forgotten history, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Trust me, we're just getting started on uncovering the truth about America's most iconic cars. Until next time, keep those big blocks rumbling and those secrets coming.